Hey everyone, I'm just going to do a quick intro to Premiere for you. Now, Adobe Premiere is a massive video program, so I'll do smaller chunks after that, but this is just getting started with Premiere. First off, Premiere takes forever to load, so if you haven't opened up Premiere yet, double click on it and let it do its bouncing thing. And while that's loading, let me go over sort of an important note. If you're used to using other programs to record and edit your videos, like Final Cut, where your files are on your computer doesn't really matter. But with Premiere, what it does is it references those files. So it needs to know where they are, especially if you're going from machine to machine, or let's face it, if you leave half the stuff in your downloads folder, other stuff on an SD card, put everything in one folder. Really quickly, bouncing back to the SD card. You never want to work with video footage directly off of a camera or an SD card. You can work off of a nice little portable hard drive, but not a USB stick. The rate in which data is transferred between an SD card and a USB stick isn't fast enough, and it can cause Premiere to crash. It can also cause your SD card to be corrupted. And it's really a bad idea to only have one copy, digital copy of your footage, especially if you went out and you did a big shoot. So it's always good practice just quickly move that to a hard drive and have that as a digital backup, or also move that to the desktop, and then at the end you can move it to a hard drive. But like I said, please, please, please do not leave your files on a USB stick. Now you can see here I am really well organized because it's a demo file, but honestly, I usually never rename my footage, but I have in the case of this just so you can see it. And I recorded my audio externally from this, so I've got an audio file and some video files there. And this is like ideal organization here. I've got my video files, my audio files, that's great. You don't have to be this organized, like I said, ideal world. Now, inside of Premiere, when you first open it up, to create a new project, you want to click New Project. And then this window opens up. Please, please, please don't ignore this window. Pay 2 seconds of attention. This is where we're going to set our project up for. So it's going to put all of the sort of cache data, which is basically little bits of sort of saved footage. It's pre-baked, so it plays back faster. And it also will put all the auto saves to this location. So I want to pay 2 seconds of attention to where it's going to go to, and tell it under the browse to save to my demo reel project folder that I've made, and it looks all nice. And I'm going to click choose. You'll notice that the instant I'm going to press this. Now this other stuff here is for when you're logging videotapes. I've worked at UCA for a while now. I've not had a student ask me about how to log a DV tape. The instant you have that question, please shoot me an email. I'll help you out with that. But for the sake of the video and your sanity, I'm not going over that now. So just quickly, give it a name, tell it where to save to, leave the defaults as they are, and press OK, and watch what happens there. You get your demo project already saved there, and then it's going to create your scratch disk and everything in just a second as well. And Premiere should open up. And it does it in its own dramatic sense. And when you first open up Premiere, it might open up in the learning mode. So let me just switch to that. It might look like this, or you might see it in the assembly mode or the editing mode. Basically, the general gist is that when you first open up Premiere, Premiere has a fluid layout, just like in Photoshop and InDesign, all the other Adobe programs, meaning that it's kind of got different layouts of the sort of the panels here for doing different jobs. You can tell what panel you're in at the very top center here, and I prefer the editing panel. I'm just going to reset this to, and if you ever mess up your panels, you can always reset the layout there. So if you ever accidentally move a panel around and it's like in the wrong space, you're like, what have I done? Windows, workspaces, reset to save layout, and that makes everything okay. And it's normal to accidentally move stuff around in all of the Adobe programs. That's how you do it. Windows, workspaces, reset to save layout. So, awesome. Kat, you've opened up a thing with 4 gray boxes. Not very interesting. The first gray box we want to look down is the one in the lower left here. This is where our media goes, our footage, our stuff. There are lots of different ways to bring footage into your project. I'm going to quickly demo 3 different ways. Use the way that's easiest for you. If I simply double click, it'll open up my project folder because I told it that's my project folder, so it's going to look there first. And I'm going to select one of my video files. I could hold the command key and select 2 files, or the shift key, and it will select, a whole group of files. But like I said, I'm going to show you 3 different ways. So I'll just command click the first and last one and click import. And that will import the files into the project like so. I could go to my Finder and I could drag a file in like this, and that will take it in. I could go Command I or File Import, and I think I could select these other 2. And that's just 4 ways of importing footage. Also too, you could drag stuff right from your Finder into your timeline. But I want to make sure that we set up a timeline in the right format, so I'll get to that in just a second. If you double click on any of your footage, that opens it up here. This is our source monitor here. This is always going to show you your footage without any effects, without any bells and whistles, just the raw footage all on its own. I can tell that I'm in this box because it's got a blue line around it, meaning that this is the active window. So if I hit the space bar, that will play and pause my video. You can see my video does eventually move. Spacebar, play. It's a very slow camera move. Spacebar, pause. I can go backwards and forwards single frames. On my keyboard, I can use the left arrow key, and that takes me backwards, and my right arrow key, and that takes me forwards. And if I want to go to the start or the end of a clip or a cut, I can use my up arrow key to go to the beginning and my down to go to the end. Up, down, yeah? So, great, Kat, we just watched the footage you already recorded. I want to edit it. Fair enough. We need to bring this over to this area. Now, one way of doing that is you can just drag your footage in here and it'll create a timeline. But I want to show you how to make a timeline to make sure that your settings are right. Because let's face it, if you've grabbed things from different sources, you want to make sure that you're working in the right sort of format. So I'm going to go File, New Sequence, or Command N. And a sequence is a timeline, and you can have multiple sequences inside of Premiere for doing different jobs. In particular, what's nice about having multiple sequences is that maybe you have different edits of the same thing. Maybe there's something you're going to have like show to a group of people and they're going to give feedback on, and then you might take their feedback or some of it, and then you can duplicate that, or you can have different scenes belonging in different sequences, like little Russian nesting dolls. But it's important that they all have the right sort of format. So the first time you open it up, you get all of these windows, and especially if you're not coming from the world of video, it looks like a whole nother language. What I'd like you to do, top folder, click on that down arrow. You're going to click on the down arrow, double click. In the folder called 1080p, because we're working high definition, or HD, that's this folder, that's a 1080p. And in the RE 1080p 25 folder, this is where we're going to look at for what you should be recording your footage on the cameras. If you've got an animation, use 24 because you should be animating at 24 frames per second. But if you've got film footage, RE 1080p 25. What are those settings? So in the settings window, I can show you here. It's RE Cinema, that's the editing mode. It's frame based, it's 25 images per second. That's what the 25 stands for. Your frame size is 1920 by 1080. That's the pixel standard definition for high definition. Our pixel aspect ratio, we want square pixels. You can do anthropomorphic if you're trying to get like a very sort of like cinematic look. Or if you're wondering why it's looking weird, you might have a different sort of anthropomorphic sort of ratio. But standard is square pixels. 48,000 hertz is the sort of sample audio rate you want to work with. So these are already preset in that setting there. So that's why that's great. You don't have to remember all those numbers. I just wanted to quickly explain it. And I can change the name there too. I can change the name later as well. So boom, I've now got a sequence. Did you see the instant I pressed OK? I've got a sequence that appears here. And I've got something here to here. You guys tell what a sequence is? If you haven't noticed, like in my footage over here, there's little icons in the corner. That little icon there means that's a sequence, and that one is basically it's a video file with some audio. That little icon there, that's supposed to be like a little audio wavelength. So that is supposed to look like a miniature timeline. It's abstract, but yeah. But the instant I've got a sequence, I've got a window over here. The reason you didn't see anything over here before, it's just gray, is because there's no sequence. This window is inherently tied to that. You need to have a sequence to see something in your sequence program monitor here. If you're wondering why you're not seeing your video that's here in this, it's because we haven't brought it into the sequence yet. So that's why it's still empty. Now, just a quick navigation of this. If you know Photoshop, some of the stuff will look a little bit familiar. These are our layers of tracks. There's two different categories for tracks inside of Premiere. V is for video. These are my video tracks. I've got 1, 2, 3, 3 different layers. Keep dragging stuff in. I'll just keep adding new layers. But honestly, the thing you'll have more of is your A's, your audio layers. These are your audio layers here. They stack down that way. Video stacks up this way. Typically, you'll have 3 or 4 video files and maybe 7 or 8 audio channels, depending on how complicated your sound is that you're mixing. In my video channels, just like in Photoshop, the lock icon should be familiar. If you lock that, that locks that layer, allows you not to mess with it. So for example, you're working on like a video file and it's got some music and you don't want to move the music around, you can put the music in, you can lock it, and then you don't accidentally move it. You could also, inside of your video layers, you'll notice that they have a different set of icons here because video layers, they don't have sound, but they are visible. So I am going to drag a piece of footage into this. You see the instant I'm just dragging it from my project window here, my dragging, clicking, holding, and dragging and releasing. And as I release, you can see I've got my little video file here in my sequence. So, and I can move it around. You can see this is me having to go through the different video layers. And then if I drag it down this way, it'll go through the different audio layers. But just for now, just seeing that you can move that up and down in the different layers. So you can like layer it like a sandwich basically. And just like with Photoshop, whatever the top layer is what you see. So if I just drag this footage in, come on, trackpad fun times. You see I could drag it right on top of that and that instantly covers it up because it's the same size. But if I wanted like text or something on top of that, I could drag that in the same way. Just going to delete that for a second. I just selected it and then press the delete key to delete it. Now I'm just going to zoom in on this a little bit because you can see I'm really far away and it's hard to kind of see what I'm doing. To zoom in and navigate that down here, this is my zoom bar and I can pull that closer together and I can see that I'm a little bit closer and I can see a little bit more information. So I said this turns the layer on and off so I can see what the video is. And there's nothing underneath it, it just goes back to black. Whenever there's nothing in a sequence, it just shows black. Yes, if you want black, that's how you get it. Just leave it empty, just leave a space. Down here, for my audio files, I've got 3 little buttons. This is more advanced stuff, that's for much later tutors, so just ignore for now. This is M for mute, so if I don't want to hear any of the sound in this track, and this applies for everything in this track, this is going to be muted. This is a fun one to accidentally click and wonder what happens. So let's say I've got 6 audio tracks, and I just want to hear what's happening in this one. I can click this. That stands for solo. That will only play that audio track that's in that A1 channel, which is a fun one to click and wonder what happened to your sound at like 11 o'clock when your deadline's midnight. That's that. So they'll only play whatever is in that track. Now you can also record. You can also record right into Premiere. And as basically I hit the record button, it gives me sort of a countdown to start recording. So I could record my audio right into that. That feature's there. I have never really used it. If I am recording audio, I usually use Audition. See the tutorials in my UCA on how to use Audition. Yeah? So, okay, great. I've got a piece of footage in my timeline. If I want to see a little video thumbnail to let me see what my video footage is, because maybe you haven't been as organized as I am in this video and your footage is not named, I can raise this little gray bar between my tracks. You see there's like a little gray line there. If I click and hover, my mouse changes its shape to like an up and down arrow. And I click and drag, that will give me what's known as a video thumbnail, so I can see my video. And if I do the same with my audio, because instead of dragging up on my video, I'm going to click in the area right between where this starts and ends, where it hovers right there. I'm going to click and drag that down. And now I can see what's called the waveform. That's the loudness. And you'll see that there's a white line here. If you don't see this line here or this line here, you can click the little timeline display settings and make sure you've got show video keyframes and show audio keyframes with a little check mark next to it. And basically what this represents on my video track is the opacity. So I can drag that down and you can see it like makes it black. So I can use this for fading in and out without adding a transition. Same thing with my audio. If it gets too loud, I can adjust that. So over here, I've got my pen tool. This is my toolbox for Premiere. This is my pointer tool or selection tool. The selection tool in all Adobe programs, to get the keyboard shortcut for that, is the letter V. Think about the letter V looks like a pointer tool, so that's the same for all of them. Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. So if you learn that today, you learn that for all of them. The other tool we'll look at in just a minute is the razor tool, which cuts your video. So think C for cut, yeah? And then our pen tool, which I'm about to show you, is P for pen. And if I use my pen tool, if I hover over this line now, I could click and make a point, and I'm going to click at the beginning and I'm going to make another point, but I'm going to drag that point down. And what that does now is that fades the audio in. So it's gradual. It's not like sometimes if you don't cut audio, you hear a very soft p sort of sound. You don't want that in your audio tracks. So you want to have it fade, especially if you don't have like nice clean recordings. Just gentle fade at the beginning and the end of your audio clip so it just sounds nice and nothing gets cut off. And if you ever need to like duck or make an audio track a little bit softer because it gets very loud all of a sudden, it's called audio ducking in video terms, you could just click and add points and just drag, and that will give you the audio sort of fading in and out. You can see there it gets quite loud. You can see how it peaks. And I ducked the audio right there so it didn't peak, so you didn't have a sort of too loud of a noise. Now if I do the same to the video, if I click at the beginning where it's 100% at the very top and click at the very, very beginning and drag that down, what I have now is a fade in. And I can control that fade, yeah? If you don't want to get, if you want to get rid of a point, I could just right click and say delete, and that gets rid of it, yeah? Sorry. So, right click, delete, and that will get rid of that. So, all right, Kat, you showed us how to do all these fancy things, but I really just want to trim this video. You can always tell where you are on a clip too. So you notice there's a little gray triangle right there at the beginning and the end. That means that I'm at the very, very first frame of the footage there, and I'm at the very, very last frame of the footage there. Meaning this is all I've got. You can't stretch video out more than what you've got. If I want to make it shorter, you notice as I hover my mouse over the edge, I've got this like red pitchfork icon. If I click and drag that way, that trims the video. It's not lost forever. It's just trimming it here in this instant that exists in this timeline. My original footage, the nice thing about Premiere is it's a non-destructive editor, so it's not ruining your original footage. You're basically, all you're doing in your timeline is saying, take these files and do these things to them, and then when you render it out, it'll make it a video. It's all non-destructive. It's basically you're just creating a set of instructions for the computer to follow to create your video. So I've just trimmed that just to be just at the camera moves. So the camera moves there. I've done a nice job of pre-marking this for you guys so that I can have basically the shot I want to have. I want to have it just start moving with a reveal. And there's the guy breaking into the back of the house. Magic of movie making. He isn't actually breaking the door. So here's my footage. I've got sort of a blank bit at the beginning. If I were to play this now from the very beginning, I would have 20 seconds of blackness. That's not ideal. How do I know what time I'm at? You see this little playhead that I'm showing you up there? This little guitar pick, as I drag this along, I can see exactly where I am in time by looking at my time code. That's this number here and this number here. The time code lets me know where I am in time and how long my footage is, yeah? So I can say, all right, I've got 20 seconds before this starts. That's a bit rubbish. If I just select this by just clicking on it and press the delete key, what it's going to do, it's going to move this right to the beginning. It's going to get rid of the gap for me. So yeah, let's get rid of the gap. Delete. Done. No gap. I'm going to use my up arrow to go to the very end of my clip, and I'm going to show you another way of editing. So one way of editing is to just drag things in like that. If I double click on my next piece of footage, I could be a bit more precise. So here's my character. He's walking down the road. So I'd like the shot to start right there when he enters frame. And I'd like to edit this right here. I'd like to just trim exactly the piece of footage I want to have and put it right into my timeline. So to do that, I'm going to hit the letter I when I'm in this window. You can see this is the window that's active because it's got the blue box on it. If my blue box is down there and I hit the letter I, it does the wrong thing. So I want to make sure I've clicked up in this box, and I'm going to make sure my playhead's in the position I want to have it. I'm going to hit the letter I. And you see how that's created this little blue tilde sort of line there? That's basically saying I've marked my in point. This is where I'd like my video to start. And I'm going to just drag it along to where I want it to stop. There. So this is where I want it to stop. Actually, I think I decided I want it to stop about there. So this is where I want it to stop. I'm going to hit the letter O for out. So I've got my in and my out point. And I just want this chunk of the video. The rest of it is a bit rubbish. Not very good. I don't want it. And I want this shot to come before this one. So I'm going to use my up arrow to navigate to the beginning of the frame. And you'll notice that down at the bottom of this window, right next to the play and pause button, I've got this little icon here, which is insert, or the comma key. And I can click that or hit the comma key on my keyboard. And that's going to do is going to insert this clip right at the beginning, right where my playhead is. So it's important to pay attention to where the little playhead, the little guitar pick of blue line is. So here I go, comma key, boom, there's my clip. And if I was sort of mid-clip and I hit it again, you'll see it puts it in between. It made a cut. To undo, like with every other software in the world, if you're on a PC, it's Control. If you're on a Mac, Command Z, gets rid of it. Boom, never happened, never made a mistake. I work perfect, right? So I've now got this clip here in this position, and I could go and find the next piece of footage. So I could work, how you work and sort of the style in which you edit is completely up to you. So you can see finding my shot. And I've got a little bit of unfair advantage. I have edited this footage before, so just keep that in mind. Like, you might need to get a chance to know your footage. So, boom, that's the shot I want to have. I for in, O for out. Insert that into my timeline. So now I've got 3 shots. I've got a very quick edit. Bit short, bit too long. If I don't like something, like I said, I could just trim it. Select that bit there, the bit that's empty. See how it's white? Press delete. Now, this shot is a bit slow. It's a bit slow, and then it has the bit that I want to have normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use my razor blade tool. Now, you can use the razor blade tool to cut your footage up, and you can do all of that here in the timeline. But I'm going to use the razor blade tool here, and I'm going to make a little cut. And basically, it means that this is going to handle this piece of footage separately than this one, because what I'm going to do is this piece of footage here, I'm going to speed it up. It's a bit slow. So to do that, I'm going to hit Control and click, or just right click on the computer. I'm on a laptop using a trackpad, so it's a little bit different. And I'm going to go to speed and duration. This is how you change the speed and duration of a clip. I'm going to select that. And right now it's at 100%. That's a bit slow for me. I'd actually like the clip, if you know exactly how long you could be, you could type in the time code. So time code's read like this. You've got your frames, that's the first two numbers. There's 25 of those in a second. Then you've got your seconds. There's 60 of those in a minute. Then you got minutes, there's 60 of those, and those go to hours. If you're getting to that point, your footage is very, very long. So congratulations, you've got a lot of editing ahead of you. And let's say I want this to be 8 seconds. I'm going to type in 0, 8. That's the length I'd like it to be. And then it figures out the value. Or I could just say I want it to be 150% of the original speed. If I want to play backwards, I could click reverse speed. Maintain audio pitch, so there's a little bit of background noise. What happens when you speed stuff up? The pitch goes higher, right? If you slow things down, the voice gets deeper, so it just helps maintain that. And then ripple edit. So because this clip's in between other clips, I want to turn ripple edit on, because if I don't, what's going to happen is if I made it much longer, it would actually overwrite parts of this footage. But if I make it much shorter, what it'll do is leave me another gap and just creates more work. The time interpolation right now is for frame sampling, but if you're slowing something down more than 200% of the original speed, so let's say like so speeding things up is like sort of 50%. To slow things down like 200% would be like 50. So speed 50%, it's twice as long now. It'll look okay, it'll duplicate every frame, but if you're doing more than that, let's say you want it like at 30% of the original speed, what you want to do is you want to go in here and you want to turn optical flow on. Optical flow is a mathematical algorithm. I know I probably lost a few of you when I said that, but a mathematical algorithm that basically looks at frame A and frame B and sort of tries to figure out what's happening, and it creates a frame AB, like a hybrid of both frames. So it looks like there's more footage that you shot it with a high-speed camera. Sometimes it does it brilliantly. Other times it makes you really think that computers will never defeat us because it's done something terrible and weird. So, like I said, if you're slowing something down really, really a lot, turn optical flow on and just have a look and see what it does. If you do turn optical flow on, you're going to have to render that out. I'll just show you that really quick. I'm going to press OK, and what you're going to see is that this clip is going to become shorter, and it's going to move this one over when I press OK. And go. Boom. And I almost guessed exactly how long it was going to be. Perfect. So now this clip is going to be a little bit faster because it was a bit slow, that camera move. There we go. And because I cut it between the two, it should go right to the other piece of footage without looking like a separate clip. It looks like it's all the same clip and I just moved the camera faster. So ideal. But let's say if I had slowed that down like a lot. I'm just going to go back into speed and duration just to show you that. And I'm going to slow that down to 30%. And I'm going to turn optical flow on. And what happens here, you see this red line. If you ever see a red line like this, what Premiere needs to do now is it needs to render and kind of run the maths to play it back so it looks like what it's going to look like when it's done. So it needs to create that sort of algorithm. It needs time to process that. So I need to tell that up here. If I go to sequence, render into out or render selection, it's going to basically like bake that effect in so that I get a sense of what it would be like to play that up. If I don't do that, I'm not going to see that algorithm and how it's applied to those frames. It's not going to make it feel slower. And the sake of just giving you a sense of what it does, I'm just going to hit cancel really quick. It does take a little bit of time to do that, and that's not what I wanted anyways. I just hit Command Z there to undo. But now you just have sort of a sense of sort of the basics of sort of moving things around. Once again, you can move clips around in any order in Premiere just by clicking and dragging. Be careful of where the audio files are, because if you drag them on top of each other, what's happened here is it's on top of this one now, but it's interrupted that other one's audio file. So just when you drag things up and around, and you want to preserve the audio file, just drag the audio file to a different channel and just pay attention to how you move things around. It is sort of a faffy thing to get used to. But when you start to have everything in place, you're like, okay, I've got sort of all my edits in place. I've got everything kind of the speed and duration I want to have. The next thing you want to do is sort of add graphics and motion capture and things like that. But I'm going to save that to another video because this is getting a bit long. Please check out my next video with sort of adding transitions, color correcting, graphics, and text. And we'll call it a day with this one. So this is just sort of the basics, getting started and putting some clips into a timeline. I hope this helps, and take care.